Hello everyone and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name's David Edgar, I'm your host as always. And this pod, well, it'll be the opposite of fun. What's the opposite of fun? Enough. And I think we all had enough of that performance on Saturday. Joining me to pick the bones out of it, and there's really no other way to put it, first of all the way from Tel Aviv, Andy Barnett.
How are you doing, David?
Yeah. You know that way when you just answer with a noise rather than an actual word. That's kind of
a grunt.
Yes.
Yeah,
where I've been since Saturday. And joining us all the way from, well, deepest, darkest Ayrshire is the instigator and fully paid up solo member of the John Bennett fan club. It's Andy McGowan.
Aye, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. I've recovered. Resilience is back up to 90%. Anybody wants to have a go, come and go.
Right, okay, well, yes, I think you might have invited yourself a bit of trouble there, judging by the response that we saw at social media at the weekend. But yeah, let's just get straight to it. An abysmal, unacceptable performance from Rangers on Saturday at Parkhead. The side didn't function in any way. They didn't look ready. They didn't look up for it. They looked surprised that Celtic played at a high tempo, get the ball back into play. They didn't look organised. They weren't aggressive. They couldn't get their own passing game going. And it was just complete dysfunction from goalkeeper outwards. Start with you, Andy McGowan. Now, I don't want to get too early back into signings because let's face it, deadline day, we could have signed Ronaldo. It wasn't going to make any difference to what we saw at the weekend. And if folk want to hear our ranting about the lack of investment, then go to Heart and Hand Extra, which came out on Friday night. That, from guys who've been at the club for a while, was an absolute shocker. Or maybe it wasn't a shocker because it's the second time we've seen it this calendar year.
I took heart for the PSV Eindhoven game, and MD's listened, MD follows me on Twitter, I know I was extremely critical after the Hibs game because of the horseshoe, over patience. I thought that would be a virtue in this game because I thought, look, if we can control the ball, that it might not be something that Celtic are used to. But we capitulated, and you're right, it's players in that team that should be ready. For the first 5-10 minutes, we've seen enough full firm games. You can tell what way the wind's blowing very, very early, and usually it's a good indicator of what way the game's going to go. And we just weren't at it. I particularly picked out Lundstrom. Now, Lundstrom I love him, but there was 3, 4, 5 occasions in the first 10-15 minutes where he did not come out with a winner in 50-50s, and I thought, this isn't going to plan. This isn't what's meant to happen in the first 10-15 an old firm game. You've got to lay down your marker physically. And the goal killed us because it should never ever be the case that we go a goal behind, even if it's 7 minutes in or whatever, and we think that's the game by. But at that point, I'm like, we've got a major problem because that patient approach and probing and controlling the ball, that kind of goes out the window because we had to keep that. We had to score first, and we had to then defend from that. And it kind of epitomises a lot of the red flags that I've been saying have existed in our domestic play. It was, I wouldn't say it was unexpected, but I would say that we should be more ready than this. We to have that carbon copy again for February to here defies belief.
Andy B on this one. Now, you accept that footballers aren't perfect and that they make mistakes from time to time. That happens, and obviously the players at a certain level will make more mistakes than players at another. But there are very basic things at every single level of football, even amateur, even just a kick about with your pals in the park, and that is awareness. That is be ready. The guy might skin you with a bit of skill because you're not as good as him, but you shouldn't be way out of position, not ready to even put in a challenge. And that first goal, I think it looked like Celtic were desperate to get the ball back into play, try and score a goal. Rangers' first instinct was to turn and complain to a referee, and it just set the tone for an afternoon where, when it came to embracing, the chaos of that fixture and overcoming it, that Rangers just didn't even seem to attempt to do that, and in fact were continually making these basic errors, allowing players to run off them, allowing Celtic to get the ball back into play unchallenged, not responding to whistles, not responding to decisions. Just a real sort of nebby, crabbit performance from this Rangers team, which in that environment was always going to be exposed.
It was embarrassing for me in big parts, and I think it represents an alarming trend, especially at Parkhead, the way that recent Old Firm performances have been going. And I know you know I'm a man for stats. If we look at I picked out 8 of the players who have been at the club for some time that Andy McGowan just alluded to. Tav, Goldson, Arfield, Kamara, Jack, Barisic, Kent and Morelos, all of whom featured at some point. They've played on average well over 200 games for the club. Most of them have played about 15 Old Firm games. So you assume half of them would have been at Parkhead. You can understand maybe a James Sands or a Malik Tillman being a bit spooked if it's their first experience or second experience. You can almost give them a pass. At the same token, I think their mistakes were also rookie-like. Tillman was not involved at all. Lundstrom, correct. A guy of his experience should be positioning himself better to win that midfield battle. But the guys that I'm extremely frustrated with are those 8 who have been at the club for 4 years plus, significant experience in this fixture, and for them not to show up and not know what to expect, not knowing to be switched on at throw-ins, at free kicks, at goal kicks, everything, winning the second ball if you don't win the first, trying to make sure that you win your personal battle. None of those players did it at all. And they are equally, if not more culpable than, say, the manager, who, by the way, did get his tactics wrong. And if we gave him a pass in February, Gio, then doing it a second time, and I think yesterday was worse. Sorry, the weekend, Saturday was worse. I still think the players have to seriously look at themselves in the mirror and want to try to address this trend. Gio's record in Old Firm games does not look good. In his first 5, we've conceded 11 goals and scored 4. Now, you compare that to Gerrard, and I don't like to do it too much, but with Gerrard, we conceded 4 and scored 3. So a -1 goal difference compared to a -7 goal difference. We did not look like being involved in a game, in a match at the weekend. And for me, that's where it becomes unacceptable.
Yeah, on that point, I do wonder sometimes if perhaps, one of the things about Gerrard and Old Firms was he embraced that it, was a very British style derby, and that there was a lot of a lot of hatred in there, and you had to be prepared to overcome it. And I've criticised Gerrard before for maybe overdoing the whole "it's a battle" thing when you were going to Pittodrie or Tannadice or whatever, but he got it right in Old Firm games. Whereas I do wonder if Gio, a bit like Advocat before him, and remember Gio was in the end of some cuffings when he was here as a player. If it's just a big game, it's just another big game, and it's not. It's an Old Firm game. It's always going to have that edge. It's always going to have that cauldron. And at the weekend, you just felt that the Celtic players got that more than our lads did, which was unforgivable. Whereas you contrast it with the semi-final, and our boys had that kind of steely determination that they were going to go out there and do something. And for me, it was, certainly it was an attitude thing. You can't say it wasn't, because if your attitude isn't right, you spend time complaining to the referee about a throw-in rather than getting back into position. You don't switch on at an offside because you're throwing your arms up about it. And these are things that we saw on Saturday. Now, we could go through the team, and we'll probably end up doing so by the end of the show today. But Andy McGowan, John McLaughlin. Now, hands up, I said that I felt that Alan McGregor was past his best. And there's a tendency to then do a complete 180, because I thought, give McLaughlin the gloves. I reckon he'll be able to handle it. Well, that was one of the worst Rangers goalkeeping performances I've seen in an Old Firm, certainly out with Banter Years teams. And then of course you say, well, get McGregor back in, and to be honest, I probably would, because I don't think you can play as badly as that and play the next game. An outfield player wouldn't get to do it. I don't see why a keeper should be a protected species on it. But the issues with McGregor that were there last season are still there. We've maybe got ourselves into a position here where we've got two goalkeepers, both of whom are a decent level, both of whom at this stage of their careers are decent backups, but neither are a number one.
It's a worry that's came home to roost, because McLaughlin's been fine, right? So if you look at his Rangers career, he's been totally assured. He's been remarkable in terms of his ability to play football with his feet. We've not really had any concerns at all. I think we all knew that McGregor's an exceptional shot stopper, but his ability to play his feet with the way Van Bronckhorst wants to play football was becoming a big problem. And I know that sounds stupid when you say, well, a goalkeeper's there to keep the ball at the net, but when you have as much as the ball as us and the way we want to play, then really the goalkeeper's got to be really good at playing football. He was, I mean, go back to that February game and we beat 3-0. McGregor was one of the ones that was causing us major problems, because every ball was going up the park or out the park and coming straight back at us. And it has been a problem, undeniable, and I think that's what swung the decision towards McLaughlin at the start of the season. I really hope we're not getting into territory where you're flip-flopping across goalkeepers. I don't like that personally. I think you've got to kind of put the flag in who you think is your number one, and unless there's cataclysmic, and we can define cataclysmic, you don't veer for that. So if he doesn't start Amsterdam, then begs the question, is that him out and McGregor's back to number one, or do you have them battling it out for each other? I thought that his performance on Saturday was, the fourth one was Ian Andrews level. Sometimes it's hard to come back for that. We're going to say another goalie, so I think we need to keep going with McLaughlin. If you're asking me where do we go from here, the fact that we play football the way we're going to play, I think we go with McLaughlin. And I might live to regret that statement, but I just think that's the way we've got to go. If you don't, you've lost a goalkeeper. Actually, you've killed his Rangers career.
I just think that I just think on this one that if it had just been the fourth goal, that's an error that happens to all goalkeepers. It shouldn't. It's a dreadful error, but it does happen. But he should have saved the first one. I don't know what he's doing at the second. I know people have said, oh, it was a great finish, which it was, but it's a great finish because he's neither on the line nor close enough to get a block. He's nowhere. He literally wanders over and says, there's a space for you to hit. Now, takes a bit of skill to hit it, but he still hits it. He still provides it. The third goal's right through him. It was, having one of those days. I don't know, Andy Barnett, I just tend to think that, as I say, an outfield player gets dropped if he plays like that, and then it's up to him to go away and rebuild and come back into it. I do take Andy's point about confidence and whatnot, but I mean, it was horrendous. It wasn't a bad performance. It was an absolute 2 out of 10 job.
Yeah, it was the worst that I've seen in an Old Firm game from a Rangers goalkeeper. I can't recall, perhaps going back to Ali Maxwell in 93-94 when he gave away 2 goals, and that was only 2. This was 4. Every single goal conceded, McLaughlin could have done something about. 3 of them were, in my opinion, entirely his fault. From the point of view, he should have stopped him or not given the ball away. Jota's finish, I agree. It's 50-50 on whether it's his fault. And he's not the only one, of course. Defence was ripped apart. That Celtic team is a good team, but their attack is very potent. And between defence and goalkeeper, nobody seemed switch on at all, which was very poor. But I think I'm going to side with Andy McGowan here, in that I don't know if changing the goalkeeper, we definitely can't go back and forward between the two. I don't think Gio will change, because he seems quite a level-headed manager from that perspective, and that he'll stick by McLaughlin for now. I hope that it's just a very bad day at the office, because to be honest, he hasn't really done too much wrong up until this point, apart from, I would say, maybe the USG game away.
Yeah, and to be fair, he had played in an Old Firm before. It's not like you can say, well, it was the Old Firm. he had played in one and was perfectly competent in it.
Yeah, but I think he's had two bad games, both of which have been very important. USG away and this game, but aside from that, he's been fine. So it's a difficult one. I think it's a bigger problem though. I think this is the issue with re-signing McGregor for a year and essentially what looks like a pension for a year, and he's going to be a cup goalkeeper. When we perhaps, in hindsight, and it's always a wonderful thing, but maybe should have invested in that position.
Yeah, definitely. And Robbie McCrory is there. It's if he's third choice now, then it's quite clear he doesn't really have a future at Rangers.
No.
So that's another issue to put into it. There's plenty of blame to go about for it. The midfield was nothing, I thought. And the thing is, people have said, well, you go there to sit back. Rangers didn't go there to sit back, and in fact had quite a lot of possession. We just did bugger all with it because we are far too slow in our build-up. And it is an ongoing issue. It's not new. It happens a lot. And we saw it at the weekend there. We don't really have any pace in the side. And I think that good teams can figure that out. And even the poorer teams in the league, let's be honest, have found that on their own patch with their own crowd behind them, that they can nullify a Rangers team. I mean, we don't go to away games. Even I was trying to think of it, like I'm not even talking about Pittodrie or the Easter Road or Tynecastle. When do we go and beat St Mirren or Motherwell 3s and 4s? It seems to have been a long time.
We seen it in Livingston the first 45 minutes. I was worried. I was trying to tell myself internally, stop overreacting, but I couldn't deny what my eyes were seeing. This horseshoe passing, it betrays itself as a lack of intensity. Teams are able to sit and conserve energy, take a chance if they get it. And the problem we've got is that if we go behind, that lack of intensity becomes a major problem because we've not got a gear that we seem to be able to shift up. It's very, very predictable that the answer becomes get the ball to Kent and hope for some individuality from him or another.
Or someone, yeah, and I think that is a very good point. I think that quite often this season we've thought, right, well, Tillman will do something, or Kent will do something, or possibly Lawrence, when he's there, will do something. And you're right, there's no obvious structure to the attack and play. Now, it works well in Europe, we've seen that. But really the only time that Rangers seem to show intensity over the last few months is in European matches that we're chasing. And Ibrox, goes nuts. And really controlled performance in Eindhoven, absolutely. Took advantage and got a goal. Excellent play by Tillman. But again, it was good individual play. I don't see us often. There were moments against St Johnstone at home, Ross County at home for that there was some good play when we did seem to have more attackers on the park. If you're relying on individuals, I'll come back to you, Andy McGowan. If you're relying on individuals and the individuals are not firing, then you're in trouble because at the weekend there was no Lawrence. Tillman, again, I'll always excuse a young debutant in his first Old Firm away at Parkhead because I've seen better players than Malik Tillman struggle in that environment. You hope he learns from it, obviously. But Kent is an absolute shadow of what he can be and what he should be. I don't think Tav has played well at all so far this season. I don't think he's been providing the sort of thing he usually does, certainly not domestically. And the midfield, I feel like Bart Simpson style, getting Gio to write on a chalkboard 100 times, Glenn Kamara cannot play as a 10, Glenn Kamara cannot play as a 10.
So you took the words out of my mouth because that's where straight I was going to go to, because it epitomised what we were dealing with on Saturday, which was that you've got Glenn Kamara, who is probably the last person in the Rangers squad I would want to have a shot from the edge of the box. He's actually quite good at getting by a player, but he does it once in a blue moon, and he doesn't hurt teams when he's playing there. And I keep getting told, well, he does it for Finland, and he looks particularly sulky and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as I seen the team on the park and I saw that Tillman was right and Kamara was central, I was like, my kind of heart sank, because with Tillman centrally, you might get a shot off him, you might get him on the end of a cross. I mean, what Barisic was one of the few pass marks in terms of attacking wise with the crosses he put in, they were absolutely brilliant. And you really only had Cholak, whereas you would like to think Tillman through the middle was going to be at the 6-yard box or the penalty spot or something. So this goes back to Gio's DNA and the fact that you were talking earlier on about the kind of cerebral approach, the Dutch approach, where technicality takes precedence over the physicality or whatever you want to call it. And that's why we've kind of been found out in the Fabi game and this game. But also, we've not got enough goals in the squad, never mind the team. And so how do you remedy that? You don't remedy it by putting Kamara at 10. That's the one thing you don't. Kamara is a peripheral midfielder that does his best work when he's patrolling one of the channels defensively and keeping it nice and tidy, like he did in Eindhoven. So it's too easy to just knock it off as one of those days. It's no. There's things here that we really need to, or Van Bronckhorst and his coaching team really, really need to address. The DNA, what is our identity? How we approach Old Firm games. It's not just another game. How do we get more goals through passages of play rather than individuality? Under Gerrard and Beale, you could close your eyes and see that movement from by kick to Tav. Somebody drops in the middle, it's out to the wing. There was patterns of play that were clearly worked on the training park. And I don't see anything of that nature whatsoever with this team. It's except the horseshoe, the fucking horseshoe that we're now familiar with. It's he's going to have to change it. I said this after the Hibs game. If he doesn't change his domestic approach quite wholesale, he's got a major, major problem.
Well, on that, Andy Barnett, his away record in 2022 is 10 away games, 16 points out of 30 and a neutral goal difference. Now, that is not a successful Rangers team set of stats. And as Andy says, nor are the issues that we have in these matches unfamiliar, because we do see the same really in each of the matches, and there is this lack of positive identity. And it just seems to be that in Europe, one-off games, we set up usually, ideally, we can play the way that I think some of the players want to play. I don't know whether the players raise their game for these occasions or not, or if it's just a completely different environment that suits them. But what we do know is that we're coming up against sides who shouldn't be able to live with us. And even if we get the victory, they are living with us.
I mentioned before about the trend, and you gave some numbers there. I think I read something that Gio's only won 6 league games away from home since he joined the club out of 13, less than half. Now, part of me agrees with you, Dave. The way that Gio sets up is not suitable for games away from home, I don't think, given those numbers. But with our own eyes, what we see in front of us, we invite the opposition into the game in their patch. Whereas at Ibrox, those tactics can work because we eventually do have the quality to pull us through with the crowd and everything else, and we seem to play a little bit more direct at home. Gio, that Dutch mentality of you win the home games easily, but away from home he almost over respects the opponent, as you said. But I think it goes deeper than that, David. I might say something that fans yourselves might not agree with, might not like, but I think since that game at Livingston when 55 was clinched, I think a lot of these players have regressed and in some cases chucked it domestically. Whether it's that they've personally had enough of the monotony of Scottish football, I don't know, because they've played terrific in Europe, out above themselves in Europe. But domestically, and in the league, and mainly talking not just away from home actually, but I think since that Livingston game, that's 18 months almost, I think so many of the players, especially the 8 that I mentioned before, have been very, very below par at best, and in some cases, like Kamara, poor. And that was an accumulation of that at the weekend, and I don't know how to change it, because it wasn't just a Gio problem. For me, it goes back to Gerrard, and I don't think they've been able to refine that intensity that they had during the 55 season. And whether they're tired, I think Tav, you mentioned before, David, that Tav's not started this season well. He hasn't, but it looks like there's an element of exhaustion about him. And some of the other players they seem to have lost that spark. And we've spoken about the lack of transfer activity coming in, but we have a lot of players there already on high wages in the squad that are not delivering. And I think so much of it, because on paper they're good enough, but it comes down to attitude. And finally, just to finish off with regards to Gio, I don't believe he is the man that can win a Scottish Premier League. I think he's a terrific cup manager, both in Europe and domestically. I have no doubts that we'll progress in the League Cup. We'll hopefully get a decent result midweek in Ajax, because he is an overthinker on individual games. He knows how to get those games done. But if we want to be the dominant force in Scottish football domestically, I don't think Gio is the man. But I think more importantly, I think the bulk of the squad are not right. I think they've passed their best. They've done it, and I really believe there's part of me that thinks that they've mentally chucked it.
Yeah, I think that in terms of that discussion about what happened last season, I think there were definite signs of it. There was no doubt. I mean, Conor Goldson himself said that there was a hunger issue, and if you look at the highlights of the last year, and there have been a lot, but they've been in games where it was all or nothing on the night. Been in the cups, as you say, it's been in Europe, where there's just an edge that isn't there in the league games, and the league games quite often feel like a slog. And we can talk about whether that's tactical. We can talk about whether or not that's application. It's a team that struggles very badly to start well. It just doesn't do it. It's actually more surprising when it does than when it doesn't. It's a team that takes a while to get going, and it's almost like you go into your work unenthusiastic and you go, Christ, and you get on with it, but it's hardly whizzing through your day. And Rangers games domestically often feel like that to me. And then you're up against a side on Saturday who are on the crest of a wave, loving life, they feel good, they feel confident, and you see the difference, because they wanted to be out there and doing what they do and what they're confident in doing, whereas our lads, I hate to say going through the motions, but there's certainly a feel. And then eventually, most weeks, they do pull themselves together and go, right, come on. And they get over the line. But it's such an effort to drag themselves. And it feels like they drag themselves there.
And I was just going to add one more thing. It's how it affects the new players as well, which is something that concerns me. That if you're a Lawrence or Tillman or Yilmaz or any of the new guys that have come through, even Cholak, who, to be fair, has had a brilliant start to the season, eventually it'll happen to them. We saw with Lundstrom last year, it took him a long time to settle in. And I think a lot of that was down to what was going on around him as much as anything else. And I fear that that's going to be the same, that we'll see a dip in Cholak's form. We'll see, Lawrence, when he comes back from injury, how up for it is he going to be? Tillman might struggle for confidence over the next few weeks. And I think that the players around him, the experienced players, have to be doing so much more to get that out of him. Because if you turn up at a club or a job yourself and you see there's a lack of spark amongst your peers and your fellow professionals, your colleagues, then what are you going to do after a few weeks? It's just going to infect you as well. And I think there's a big problem there. I really do. And I know we're reactionary now after a horrendous result, but I think we're being fair in that we've looked deeper into it over the last year to 18 months. And that's really, as I say, what concerns me, is that I think there's a lot of talent at the club, especially with the new players, but we won't see the best of them until everybody really has a serious attitude change. It's not just Morelos that's had a bad attitude this season, put it that way.
Yeah, and again, an attitude thing doesn't necessarily need to be,
out in the piss. No, of course not. Of course,
we're not saying that the players
a hunger
that we're highlighting a hunger. Yeah, we're not saying that the players that we're discussing are going into training late or swinging the lead. It's nothing like that. It's just there doesn't seem to be any joy in what Rangers do, except in these one-off massive games where there's an edge and a spark and a difference, and it feels exciting, and it's all or nothing that night, and that's when they respond. But when they're having to go, and you're right, for some of them, for the umpteenth time to Easter Road, for the umpteenth time to Fir Park, then it just seems that there's a sort of lack of enthusiasm that translates into their play. And look, this is something that Andy banged on about a few weeks ago. I mean, I'll be honest, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And as a football fan, I think you're entitled to it. And I'm a fairly optimistic fan. So when things are okay and we're winning, I'll say, yeah, great, and try to look at the glass being half full. And then when it's revealed that it's in fact half empty, I think you're allowed to say that. And that's kind of what we're doing here. Because in no universe, I know that there's the theory that there's an infinite number of alternative universes where everything is played out, every single decision is played out differently. In none of them will a Rangers manager be able to go and lose 4-0 at Parkhead and not get severely criticised. It's not going to happen. So that, I think, is a realistic appraisal of where we are. We're not really set up, I think, correctly, as you mentioned, Andy, to win a title. I get Andy McGowan. I get heavy vibes of when Louis van Gaal was at Manchester United. And funnily enough, he won a cup at Manchester United. But a lot of the complaints were the same. There was no zip. There was no drive to the play. It was all very staid, all very tactical and technical. And again, it translated into a cup success, but they were miles off it in the league. And I'm getting really worrying vibes about that. And it's one of those thoughts that has been popping up occasionally, and I've tried to just kind of bat it away and say, no, I don't, bugger off, you nasty thought. But when you're watching that on Saturday, all you can do is go, yeah, well, there it is.
Well, I'm using the phrase Gio's DNA deliberately because you can't change their DNA, and I'm really fearful that Gio can't change it. Now, he's got a massive backroom staff. You've got Mackay, you've got Voss, you've got the new boy whose name escapes me.
Kerry Bowley.
That's the one. And you've got to imagine, I've mentioned in previous pods that the influence of Voss, I think, became clear last year when he came in, and it helped our European run. But Gio's a boss, and I think it's his personality that eventually pulls through, or is the dominant personality upon the team. And he is a very, very cool player, cool manager, but looks at, I don't mean cool as in the Fawns, I mean as in literally doesn't lose his temper or lose focus. And I do think that the Dutch sensibility of technicality over physicality is something that runs deep with them. And I wonder if there's players in our team who are a wee bit compromised by the tactical impositions upon them. Now, I'm going to use an example here. Now, don't take the player I'm going to talk about as a signal of anything other than an indication of what I'm trying to say here. Sakala is a player that plays off the cuff, has pretty much zero tactical awareness, and 99 times out of 100, Gio van Bronckhorst will choose Scott Wright over Sakala. And I've made the comment that in some of the games, particularly at home, we need a wee bit of chaos to change things up. And you could be playing the likes of Sakala. I'm not saying Sakala's the answer. I'm just saying you could be playing the likes of Sakala to try and invigorate your attacking play and take the chance on whatever tactical deficiency Van Bronckhorst might have. Because you can say what you want about Sakala. He creates a goal threat and you don't really know what he's going to do. Whereas with Scott Wright, I don't want to be cruel to the boy, but he's becoming a paint by numbers winger with a wee bit of pace. And when he look out of place in a Warburton team, if he was playing a Warburton team, David, we'd be saying, he's a good player, but he's not what we need to get to the next level.
No, the reason that I know exactly what you're saying, it's because the reason the manager loves Scott Wright, and he does, and he gives him a lot of opportunities, it's because Scott Wright does exactly what he tells him.
Exactly.
He will run the areas that the manager tells him to run. He will do all the things the manager wants him to do, whereas other players won't. Again, to use an example for the past, and again, I think a manager with a lot of these echoes, when Benitez was at Liverpool, it was felt that they're a wee bit too predictable at times, so they signed Robbie Keane because he would play off the cuff, and he dropped him after about 3 weeks because he was like, no, I can't, I need a player that I know he's going to do what I tell him to do. And you're right, that's a natural inbuilt football conservatism. You join us tonight, folks, when Andy's just heading out to a street party for the new PM. Both of you actually probably know about it. And Andy McGowan is certainly the charter member of another fan club in Saltcoats. So
I'm going to stop you there. I just came delivery my Unite Union membership card the other day, so you can't just...
What? You fucking sellout. I cannot believe you.
The Tory thing's just it's an 80% persona, but
so it is. Aye, so it is. An 80% persona and a 100% voting record. But
I'm staying out of it. I've got my own local election to deal with in a couple of months. So you guys crack on there.
No, let's not get into Israeli politics, my God.
Indeed.
Yes, yeah.
Indeed.
We're all having a tough enough week without getting into that particular nightmare. So yeah, let's just concentrate. And before anyone gets offended, Andy and I like to wind each other up about this, folks. It's not in any way serious, but let's anything to go away from talking about that fucking
Did
game.
you go for Sakala to Liz Truss? My God.
I have a very active mind, and I have a mind that likes to run away from its problems. And I think that we've got 99 problems right now, and the pitch is one.
Can I just say though that the last time that Britain had a female right-wing prime minister, it was the start of 9 in a row. Just wanted to throw that out there.
I'll take that right now. And if someone can guarantee me 9 in a row, I'll vote Tory, right? I'll vote anybody you ask me to, with the exception of one particular party in Scotland who, you would need to take me outside and hit me over the head first. But back to the football. So we've got all these problems, right? They're obvious. And the great thing, in a way, about football is that you can debate it and debate it and debate it, and we do. We love doing it. We have this website to do it. We have all our listeners who join in with us, and we get all this, good discussion. Actually learn a lot from our listeners. And there comes a point, though, where the result is just staring you in the face, and you cannot anymore have a theory or a debate about it, because it is what it is. Rangers got cuffed. Rangers don't win enough games away from home. These are the indisputable truths of the matter. Now, what do we do? Now, I've said before, sometimes people say, where do we go from here? Well, we go to Amsterdam and then we go to Pittodrie. Football keeps going. It's not a case of you go on when you're ready. It's you go on on Wednesday at 5:45, you go on Saturday at 12 o'clock. It's all there. You need to just fess up and do it. But I think the manager has got to look at... Here's the thing for me. I'll start with you, Andy Barnett, on this one. He's gone with the tried and tested guys this season. And that's understandable, because you sometimes want to put in your new guys and just drip feed them in, with the exception of Cholak, who kind of had to play really right from the start. Everybody else was sort of introduced slowly. Tillman, when he got introduced, hit the ground really running fast, so he played a bit more. But the rest, for whatever reason, haven't played. There comes a point when you sit and go, if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you're getting. So if you have options, surely it's time to use them. And that's when you start looking at guys like Ridvan. That's maybe when you even start looking at guys like Charlie McCann and saying, okay, short term, it might not be absolutely ideal, but the potential upside, both long term and in the next couple of months, is high. Whereas going with the guys who are just delivering this same stuff most weeks, I can't see why that would be any different to what we've witnessed.
There's an age-old argument with Rangers fans, is that would you sacrifice a season of transition and development from the old into the new and the young, knowing that we'll win probably nothing, will be 10 to 15 points behind the other lot come May, even before that, the way we're going right now. But the longer term is that these young players will have blended in, they'll have a season of development behind them, and then next year we can have a real crack at it on all fronts. Most Rangers fans I know would say no, because we're built on, no, we want to win and we want to win now. And these players that are currently here are on big wages, so how can you drop them? How, rotate them, yes, but drop them, no. I really believe that this year now has to be one of transition, because I think whilst of course it's September, for Christ's sake, there's hard, we're 6 games into the season, 32 games still to go. But if we're being honest, if we carry on like this and starting even away at Pittodrie at the weekend, in which case if we lose, Aberdeen go in front of us in the league, I don't see Gio coming back from something like that unless he has a vision of trying to change it. Andy McGowan spoke about the DNA. What is it we want to be? What kind of team do we want to be? Do we want to be that Ajax model where we produce great players, we win the league 50%, maybe 60% of the time, but every sort of 3 to 4 years we have a turnover and we start and build again? If that's what we want to do, then fine, but that has to be something that's universally accepted, and that's a big problem because I don't believe it will be. We've got until the World Cup, really, I think, to hang into a title race. So what's that, a couple of months, basically? 10 to 12 league games or whatever it is, because we don't face Celtic again until January. But I think if we can hang on until the World Cup by winning, I think we can maybe afford to not win one of those games, but that is really it. Anything more than that, because I don't see Celtic dropping many points at all, which means it's up to us. So starting in Ajax, yes, and this is the irony. I feel that we can go there this week and get a result. I really, really do, because that's the players and the management. That's their happy place. But domestically, I have to say, unless he changes the formation, unless he changes the personnel, I see us dropping further behind. And again, that's not to be too negative, but it's just the trend and the way I see it. We know how up for it Aberdeen will be. We know how up for it Hearts will be in a few weeks, and the other games that will come thick and fast as well. So if we can hang in within 6 points of Celtic come the World Cup, and then we can go from there, then I think we'll be okay. But my heart tells me yes, my head tells me no.
Andy McGowan?
I agree with a lot of that. I think the game on Saturday was a kind of analogy for our season. If we'd stayed in there to half time, we would have had a chance, believe it or not. I know that sounds ridiculous now if 4-0 Coffin, but if we'd get 1-0, we would have had a chance, because the second half provides a new dawn. We've got to stay in touch now, and that sounds ridiculous, but as the reality we're in is that Celtic are currently a juggernaut. They're attacking, they're scoring goals. They do not look like dropping points to the dross that we face in the league, and we need to stay in touch with them until the World Cup. And then, as we know, we always respond great to winter breaks and all sorts, so we'll come back even better, and then we'll just catch up on them. But in all seriousness, we need to get our players bedded in that have come in, because I think this is part of the problem. If I'm being generous to Rangers, we've got players that are still bedding in, and I think it's something we often forget. We talk about Tillman. He's a young boy. I think he's going to be a superstar. I stand by that. His next Old Firm game, he will be better. Matondo seems to have been written off in the back of a game against Queen of the South. I think that's nonsense. I think we need to start bedding him into the game more. I'd like to see him being playing before Scott Wright, for example. Nothing against Scott Wright. Well, actually, I've got something against Scott Wright, but and Ben Davies has started to come in. I think he'll make a change. I think we could potentially see Sands move up one in the team and give us a wee bit of bite in the middle of the park, get more out of Lundstrom. All these kind of things are the inches that have contributed to what happened on Saturday. They're not the reason. The reason is that we were totally ill prepared, and the desire and the alertness, the literal alertness on the part was missing. But I think there is a lot of factors that haven't quite went in our favour so far, and we really should have expected from what was a mini overhaul. I know it doesn't seem like it because we didn't have players, a much changed team, but we have had a wee bit of a mini overhaul. I would have liked to have seen Lowry fit and playing. Because I think he would be on the bench and making a difference to our attacking invention, I've got to say, and I think he will come in.
He does something that none of the rest of them do, which is his first thought all the time is, can I play this forward? Now, sometimes he'll give the ball away. That's, especially at his age, he'll get better with it, through experience. But we have a clutchy midfielder who far too often their first instinct is keep it nice and tidy, turn away out of trouble, retain the ball. And that's a skill, and you do need it, but you need one of it. Yep. You don't need three of it. And Lowry is the one that you kind of look around the squad. Arfield as well, but Arfield, with all due respect, doesn't have Lowry's natural ability.
No.
And that's not to say, by the way, that Lowry will go on and have the career that Scott Arfield's had. Arfield works so hard, and but in terms of technique, I don't think I'm being outrageously unfair to say that you would suggest that Alex Lowry has a wee bit more of it naturally. But they're the only guys that will go, as soon as I get the ball, I'm looking up and seeing who's making a move, who's making a run. But again, then we need more. We need more from the wide players. Kent, we've mentioned this. This is not new. There isn't a Rangers fan out there. He doesn't score enough goals. Nowhere near it. And he's actually getting worse, I think, in front of goal, where it's looking further and further away. Well, let's hope he rams those words right up my unfortunate place, but that's where it would deserve to go if he goes and has a stormer and bangs them in against Ajax. Nice easy fixture, Andy Barnett, for us to get back on the horse with, just going to Holland, playing an Ajax team. But again, weirdly, you just think that this is the type of game that they respond in. And it's, bizarre, it's counterintuitive, but yet here we are.
I think if we had a home game against a St Johnstone or something like that, it would find it tough, because we know it would be turgid and we'd all get frustrated, and then we'd probably win 2-0 with the 2 second half goals and coming away going, thank God for that. I think Ajax away is exactly the type of game that this group of players need to bounce back. Because this is where they want to test themselves. It's the Champions League, for fuck's sake. This is what we've all been building up to.
If you can't get up for this,
then
they couldn't get up for Parkhead.
Well, that's true, but I think we will go and get a result. I think we can get a point. I can actually see that we could even get 3. I think Ajax are, well, we know what Ajax are as a club, phenomenal club. They have lost a lot of players. I was listening to James Forrest on the Hangover about that, and the commentary from the guy from the Netherlands there, and they have lost a lot of good players. They don't play as quick and intense a game as Celtic do, I don't believe, and I think this might suit Rangers. And if and it's always that 2-letter word, if our players are switched on and they execute what Gio tells them to do, I think we'll get a result, and it may paper over the cracks domestically, but it'll still be absolutely fantastic. This team thrives in Europe, and we all do as fans. We prefer brilliant European nights over no disrespect to the SPFL games at home or away, for that matter. But it has to be something long term. This is the immediate, and we can only look at the next game in front of us. But if we do get a result, draw or a win, fantastic, brilliant. But then Aberdeen away, we cannot see us drop more points. I think that's almost more important, looking ahead at the weekend. But first things first, I'd like to see 1 or 2 changes. It's hard to drop Borna. I know you mentioned before about bringing in Ridvan at this stage, but I feel Borna is actually probably in our top 3 or 4 players so far since the start of this season, although he is one of these guys you just mentioned that has the tendency to pass it backwards rather than forwards. But I would like to see 1 or 2 changes. I just don't think the Gio will make too many. That's my only concern, I have to say. But if everyone's on it, I think we'll get a result.
I also really enjoy European nights, some amazing ones recently. I probably enjoy more a big silver trophy getting waved at me after 38 games, but that's, the moment maybe it's take what we can get. Right, folks, that will do us for this week on Heart and Hand. We'll be back, of course, next week here on the Monday to review what happened at Pittodrie. Adam will be back, but I think Friday this week, because he's planning his trip to Amsterdam, and it doesn't involve an awful lot of being able to see from what I can gather with his itinerary. So it'll probably be Friday night before you hear from him on that one, and he will review the Ajax game and preview that trip to Pittodrie. Just time to thank our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, and to thank my 2 guests today. Never a good shift to be asked to do after we've lost an Old Firm game, but I thought they both did very well. First of all, Andy Barnett.
Yeah, thanks, David. And if I don't know if you're going yourself to the Netherlands, but whoever is going, I hope you enjoy it and have a safe journey.
Yes, I'm off to the Netherlands via the North Pole, because that was the direct flight prices, where I honestly think NASA launched space shuttles for less than the direct flight
travel safe
Glasgow. So like a lot of bears, I'm going, but I'm going via some exotic locations. And of course, as always, Andy McGowan.
I've got to say, my pleasure, but it was murder. I'm not going to Amsterdam, but you can all start wishing me a safe trip to Naples anytime you want, because I'm beginning to regret booking it.
Someone told me today that Naples isn't as bad as it's portrayed, which I am clutching onto, like, like I would be if I'd been on the Titanic. I'd be clutching onto someone else's baby, pretending it's mine, like Billy Zane in that movie. So I'm clutching onto that fact. Right, folks, of course, you can hear more from us if you go to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/Heart and Hand, £1.50 per month, and you will get up to 5 shows every single, or from £1.50 per month, you will get up to 5 shows every single day. Thank you so much for joining us, and keep the heat up. We'll talk to you again next week. Bye bye, everyone.